She said it so casually, like she was commenting on the weather. You're not enough. It wasn't cruel, just measured. The kind of truth someone says when they've already decided to stop caring how it sounds. And maybe that's what hooked me first, not the words themselves, but how easily she could say them. I met her at Bennin's Book Repair, a narrow little shop that smelled like dust, coffee, and the kind of patience most people don't have anymore. I'd taken the part-time job after leaving college, not because I needed money, but because I didn't know what else to do with the quiet. She came in once a week, sometimes twice, always carrying something old, a journal, a crack-spined anthology, a book that had meant something to someone once. She wasn't like the usual customers who made small talk. She had this air of contained knowing, like she'd already seen through you and decided whether you were worth her time. The first day I really noticed her, she was standing by the counter, holding a thin poetry collection. The cover was torn at the corner, and she kept smoothing it with her thumb, almost absent-mindedly. You handle these better than the others, she said. I looked up from my tools. Better how? You don't rush them. Most people do. I smiled, not sure what to do with the compliment. Guess I'm not most people. That made her laugh, a soft, tired kind of laugh that sounded more like an exhale than amusement. No, she said, you're definitely not. For a second, she just looked at me. Too long. Long enough that I noticed the flecks of gray near her temples, the faint trace of ink on her wrist, the way her eyes softened when she was curious but didn't want you to know it. Then she broke the silence. You're new here. What's your name? Noah. Elena, she said. I used to come here years ago, before it started feeling like a memory. She said that last part half under her breath. I almost asked what she meant, but she had already turned toward the window, watching the rain streak across the glass like it was telling her something private. We fell into this quiet rhythm after that. She'd come in, leave a book, make small talk that somehow felt heavier than small talk ever should. I started learning her habits, how she always asked for her receipt even though she never needed it, how she lingered before leaving like she was deciding whether to stay. One Thursday, she stayed longer than usual. I was fixing the binding on a leather journal she'd dropped off. The radio was playing something low and scratchy in the background. You do this like it matters, she said. It does matter. She tilted her head, curious. To who? I met her eyes and tried to sound casual. To whoever rode inside. Something flickered in her then, a shadow of something she didn't want me to see. She stepped closer, close enough that I could smell her perfume, faint citrus, and something older, like pages that had absorbed sunlight. You talk like someone who hasn't learned disappointment yet, she said. Maybe I'm just pretending. Her lips curved, not quite a smile. Pretending doesn't last. And that's when she said it. You're not enough. Not mocking. Not dismissive. Just stating it like fact, like gravity. I didn't know what made me say it back. The nerves, the quiet challenge, or something else entirely. Then I'll be everything. She didn't respond. Just watched me, her expression unreadable, her hand brushing the journal between us, slow, deliberate, almost like a dare. Then she turned, slipped on her coat, and left without another word. That night, I couldn't stop replaying it. The way her voice had trembled, barely, when she said enough. The way her perfume lingered on the paper she'd touched. I don't know why it mattered. But I kept thinking, maybe she wasn't telling me who I was. Maybe she was telling me what she'd stopped believing in. And somehow, that made me want to see her again. Not to prove her wrong, but to understand why it hurt to hear her say it. Elena came in again the next week. Same soft rain tapping against the glass. Same scent of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. She carried a small box this time, both hands wrapped around it like it might fall apart if she didn't hold it just right. Can you fix this one? She asked. Inside was an old photo album, the kind with thin plastic sleeves and faded ink captions curling at the edges. The spine was cracked in two, pages slipping out like memories trying to escape. I nodded. It's seen better days. She gave a small smile. Haven't we all? There was something different about her that afternoon. No makeup. Her hair tied back carelessly. She looked tired, not in the way that comes from lack of sleep, but in the way that comes from carrying too much for too long. While I worked, she stayed close, pretending to browse. She wasn't really reading the spines, Her eyes drifted. Sometimes she hummed quietly, an absent tune that caught in her throat halfway through. I could feel her presence behind me, the faint warmth of it, like sunlight that doesn't quite reach the skin. After a while, I said, "These photos, they mean a lot to you." She hesitated. "They used to." The pause after that felt heavier than the words. When I looked up, she was tracing one of the photos that had slipped out, a younger version of herself with a man I didn't recognize. Her hand trembled slightly before she set it down. "I shouldn't have brought this," she murmured. "Why not?" She exhaled. "Because I didn't want to remember. But I couldn't throw it away either." I didn't answer. I just kept working, careful, deliberate. Her words hung in the air like dust, quiet but impossible to ignore. After a moment, she stepped closer, close enough that I could see the faint crease near her temple, the line her glasses left on her nose. She leaned on the counter, watching my hands. "You fix things so gently," she said. "Some things don't survive force," I replied. Her eyes lifted to mine, sharp, searching, then softer. "You really believe that?" "I think you can tell when something still wants to be fixed." For a second, she looked like she might say something real, but she stopped herself. Instead, she straightened her coat and said lightly, "You talk like you read too much poetry." "Maybe I do." She smiled, not the practiced one I'd seen before, but something smaller, almost fragile. "That's dangerous, you know." I tried to sound casual. "What is?" Believing words can save anything. Then she turned away, walking toward the door. Before leaving, she paused, her reflection caught in the rain-specked glass. Her voice barely carried over the sound of the street. "Be careful, Noah," she said. "You'll start trying to fix people next." The bell above the door chimed as she left. I watched her disappear down the street, her shoulders squared, her hands buried deep in her pockets, and I realized something I didn't want to admit. I wasn't sure if I wanted to fix her. I just didn't want her to keep breaking alone. "You said." The storm started just before closing. Thick rain against the shop's old windows, wind pushing the sign so hard it clanged like a heartbeat. I was stacking books when Elena rushed in, shaking out her umbrella, damp curls clinging to her face. "I thought you'd be closed," she said, breathless. I admitted, glancing at the clock. "But I couldn't leave yet." Her laugh was small. "Still pretending you don't have a life outside this place." I shrugged. "Maybe this is my life." Something in her expression softened, just for a moment. Then she looked away, pretending to study the shelves. I was passing by. I saw the light. I didn't ask why she came. I didn't have to. The power flickered twice before finally cutting out, leaving us in half-darkness. I grabbed a small lantern from the counter, its warm light spilling over the room. The glow caught her face, pale, thoughtful, tired. "You're staying until it lets up," I said. She hesitated. "I shouldn't. You'll get soaked out there." "I've been soaked before." Her tone tried to be sharp, but the words trembled at the edges. She stood still for a few seconds, then sighed and slipped off her coat. We sat across from each other at the workbench, the rain filling the silence between us. She was flipping through a repaired book, her fingers tracing the spine, slow and deliberate. I could feel every second stretch longer than it should. "Do you ever regret anything?" I asked quietly. Her hand froze. "Why would you ask that? You just seem like someone who's had to let go of things they didn't want to." She gave a small, dry laugh. "That's poetic, Noah. And dangerous." "Why dangerous?" "Because it assumes there was a choice." She looked at me then, really looked. The lantern light caught her eyes, and for a second, it felt like standing too close to fire. I wanted to reach out, to touch the back of her hand resting on the table, but I didn't. I stayed still. Then her phone buzzed, sharp, jarring. She blinked and glanced down. The name on the screen made something in her face go distant. "Sorry," she murmured, standing to take it. "I need to," but she didn't move far. The call was brief, low, and strained. Words like "no," "not tonight," and "please stop calling" drifted through the dark. When she returned, she didn't sit. She leaned against the counter, her arms folded tight. "I should go," she said. "The rain hasn't stopped." "I know." There was something in her voice, not anger, not fear, something else. Exhaustion, maybe. The kind that sinks deep enough to blur every line between want and mistake. She looked at me again, and the air changed, sharp and fragile at once. I stepped closer without meaning to. Just one step. Close enough to see the tiny raindrops still clinging to her hair, the faint quiver of her jaw. She didn't move. Didn't breathe, maybe. Her eyes dropped to my mouth, then back to my eyes, quick, guilty. For a heartbeat, everything felt like it might tilt forward, like one of us would forget the rules we hadn't spoken. Then she whispered, "Don't." And I didn't. But I also didn't step back. For 3 days, she didn't come. The shop felt wrong without her. Too still, too neat. The radio hummed softly, the air stale from untouched coffee grounds. Every time the bell above the door rang, my heart moved before my mind did. But it was never her. Then, late Friday afternoon, just as I'd stopped hoping, she appeared, standing in the doorway like she wasn't sure she belonged there anymore. Her hair was loose this time, a little messy from the wind. She didn't say hello. She just stood there, staring at the counter, the books, the half-finished binding I'd left waiting. "I shouldn't have come," she said finally. "Then why did you?" She closed the door behind her, the bell giving a faint, tired sound. "Because silence started to feel heavier than you do." The words hit harder than I expected. I tried to laugh, but it came out thin. "That's not much of a compliment." "I wasn't trying to compliment you." Her tone wasn't sharp, just honest. Like she didn't have the strength to pretend anymore. She moved to the counter, tracing the edge with her fingertips. Her hands looked pale against the wood, veins faintly visible, trembling just enough for me to notice. "I don't know what this is," she said quietly. "Whatever it is we're doing." I swallowed. "We're not doing anything." She gave me that look, the kind that saw through every defense I thought I had. Exactly. The word hung there like smoke. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The clock ticked, painfully loud. The outside world faded, just rain against the glass and the hum of the radiator that never worked properly. She sat down at the workbench, across from me. Her eyes were tired but steady. "You think I don't see what's happening?" "I don't know," I said. "Maybe I don't either." Her lips parted as if to argue, but she stopped. Instead, she looked down at her hands, rubbing her thumb along the crease of her palm. "You remind me of something I used to believe in," she murmured. "What's that?" That wanting meant something. I felt something twist inside me. Not joy, not guilt, something between the two. And it doesn't. She met my eyes. "Not when it leads nowhere." We sat there, breathing the same heavy air, pretending it wasn't shaking us. I wanted to say I think about you when you leave, but I didn't. I wanted to ask who keeps calling you, but I didn't. Instead, I said, "You could tell me to stop." She smiled faintly. "Would you?" I couldn't answer. Her gaze lingered on me, not tender, not cruel, just human, frighteningly so. Then she said, barely above a whisper, "You're too young to carry someone else's emptiness, Noah." I felt every word land like a bruise. She stood, picked up her coat, and paused at the door. For the first time since we'd met, she looked uncertain, stripped of all that calm control. "I don't know what I'm doing," she said. Her voice cracked on the last word. Then quieter, almost to herself, "But it's getting harder to stop." It was a quiet Tuesday, late enough that the street outside was mostly empty, and the shop had that muted calm that only exists after the day's been spent. I was packing up when I saw her through the window, standing in the drizzle, holding something against her chest like a secret. She didn't come in right away. She just stood there, watching me move around, the glass fogging slightly between us. Then, as if she'd made a decision she didn't want to make, she pushed the door open. "No umbrella?" I said softly. She shook her head. Didn't think I'd stay long. But she stayed. She always did. She handed me a thin envelope, damp around the edges. "Can you fix this?" The question was quiet, but it wasn't really about the paper. Inside was an old photograph, folded, torn, edges worn to transparency. A man and a woman, standing too close, laughing at something the camera didn't catch. The woman was her. Younger, freer, eyes brighter. The man wasn't me. "He died 8 years ago," she said before I could ask. Her voice was even, like she'd practiced this tone, calm enough to survive it. I used to think if I could keep this picture from falling apart, maybe I could keep some part of him, too. I didn't move. Just watched the photo, the way her hand hovered over it, as if it might disappear if she let go. I'm sorry, I said. Don't be. You didn't know. She sat down, her wet hair dripping onto her coat sleeve. He was a teacher. Philosophy. Used to say time doesn't take things from us. It just forces us to look at what's left. I swallowed. You talk about him like he's still around. Her eyes flicked to mine, then away. Sometimes he feels closer than anyone alive. Silence stretched, not heavy, not empty, just full of things I couldn't name. She looked up after a moment, meeting my gaze. You remind me of him sometimes. I tried to smile. That's probably not a good thing. Maybe not. Her lips curved faintly, but her eyes didn't follow. But it's not your fault. She leaned back in the chair, the light catching the faint silver at her temples. When you first started talking to me, I thought it was harmless. Curiosity. A distraction. But then you started to notice things, the way I hold my hands, how long I pause before I answer. He used to notice those things, too. Her voice thinned. It scared me. Why? Because I didn't want to be seen again. That landed deep. I wanted to tell her that I didn't see her out of pity or fascination. I saw her because she made the world feel more real. But I couldn't say it. Instead, I just said, then why keep coming back? She hesitated, then reached for the photo again, smoothing the corner gently. Because you make it harder to live like he's the only one I ever loved. Her eyes glistened, and before I could respond, she stood, gathering her things. Don't fix the photo, she whispered. Let it stay broken. I need to learn how to let things fade. And just like that, she left, the bell above the door ringing once, echoing long after she was gone. I looked down at the photo on the counter, the torn faces barely holding together, and realized something that made my chest ache. For the first time, she hadn't run from the truth. She'd left it behind with me. She didn't come for 2 weeks. The photograph stayed on the counter, tucked beneath the register where I couldn't stop seeing it. The shop felt suspended, quiet in a way that wasn't peaceful. Every sound seemed too loud, every clock ticked an accusation. When she finally returned, it wasn't dramatic. No rush of rain or trembling entrance. She just walked in as if she'd never left, calm, composed, though her eyes gave her away. They always did. I didn't say anything. Neither did she. For a long moment, we just stood there, facing each other across the counter like people who'd already said too much. Finally, she broke the silence. You kept it. Her voice was soft, almost cautious. Couldn't throw it away, I said. Didn't feel like mine to decide. She gave the faintest smile, barely there. That's the kind of answer he would have given. I'm not him. I know, she whispered. That's the problem. But her tone wasn't harsh. Just honest, raw in a way that stripped away all the practiced distance she'd worn for months. She stepped closer, slowly, until the space between us was too small to hide in. The air shifted, not charged this time, just real. Tired. Honest. I keep wondering, she said, if I've been holding on to grief so tightly that I stopped making room for anything else. I hesitated. And if you let go? She looked down at her hands, then up again. Then I'm scared there'll be nothing left. Without thinking, I reached out, not to grab, not to comfort, just to be there. My fingers brushed hers, tentative, unsure. She didn't move away. Her skin was cool, trembling slightly, and she stared at our hands like they were something fragile she didn't trust to last. I don't know what this is, she said, or what it's supposed to become. Me neither. The simplicity of it seemed to disarm her. A quiet exhale left her lips. I used to think love was supposed to fix people, she murmured. But maybe it just helps them stop pretending they're fine. I didn't answer. Words felt useless, too blunt for the kind of truth hanging between us. We just stood there, her fingers still under mine, the faint hum of the heater filling the silence. The smell of old paper, rain-soaked air, and something fragile enough to break with the wrong breath. She leaned forward then, just enough for her forehead to touch mine. No kiss, no grand gesture, just stillness. Her whisper brushed my skin. You make it quiet in here. I closed my eyes. You make it matter. Neither of us moved. The world outside kept going, traffic, wind, time. But in that moment, everything softened. There were no promises, no declarations. Just two people standing close enough to feel the ache of almost, and the relief of not running anymore. When she finally pulled back, she smiled, small, tired, real. "Don't fix anything tonight," she said. And for once, I didn't. It's been 6 months since she left the bookshop for the last time. She didn't say goodbye, not really. Just came in one afternoon, returned a repaired journal I'd forgotten was hers, and said, "You should find something new to fix." Then she smiled, soft and certain, and walked out into the sun. I haven't seen her since. Sometimes I still catch the faint smell of her perfume when I open an old book, citrus and ink, memory and dust. The kind of scent that feels borrowed, temporary. I think that's what we were, in the end. Temporary, but not wasted. I still work here. The shop's the same in all the usual ways. The same crooked shelves, the same old radio that fades in and out during storms. But it feels lighter somehow. Maybe because she made me realize that not everything broken needs rescuing. Some things just need to be witnessed before they fade. There's a kind of peace in that. She taught me that silence doesn't always mean absence. Sometimes it's what remains after the noise has said all it can. I used to think love was supposed to last forever, like in the stories, a thing that fills all the cracks and fixes every tear. But now I think love, the real kind, isn't about keeping someone. It's about understanding them well enough to let go without bitterness. That's what she gave me. Not romance, not closure. Understanding. One night, months later, a letter came. No return address, just my name in her looping handwriting. Inside, one sentence written on cream paper. "You were never a replacement, Noah. You were a reminder that I could still feel." No signature, no explanation, just that. I read it once, twice, then set it inside the repaired photo album, the one she told me not to fix. The torn edges are still there, but I think that's the point. Not everything needs to look whole to mean something. I still think about her sometimes. Not in the way I used to, not with ache or longing. More like remembering a song that once filled a quiet room, and realizing the silence afterward isn't empty, just changed. If she ever walks through that door again, I'll probably still look up first, just in case. But if she doesn't, that's okay, too. She taught me that loving someone isn't about proving you're enough. It's about learning when to stop trying to be everything. I guess that's what this story really is. Not about two people falling in love, but about two people learning to be honest when love wasn't enough to save them, but enough to change them. So if you're watching this, maybe think of the person who taught you that lesson, the one who made you softer, even if they never stayed. Tell me, was there someone who made you believe again, even just for a moment?